Happy Tuesday, Tyler.
Happy Tuesday. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing excellent. What are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about goals,
Goals.
money goals.
Money. Love it.
Yeah. Goals that a brand or a business sets for long-term growth.
Yeah,
So, why would you say that setting revenue goals and, even net worth goals for a company is so important?
it's a good question. I think honestly, at least for my perspective or my viewpoint, it's the same as setting goals in life and
Mhm.
say, like almost sometimes I look at like, hey, can you just get up and every morning and just go for a run? Versus sign up for a marathon or something like that and motivates you to go for a run, because
Mhm.
generally you tell people you sign up for a marathon and then they'll maybe, hey, how's it going? And you kind of feel a little bit accountable and you'll actually get up and do it because you're
Mhm.
motivated by like an end goal type of a
Mhm.
thing versus just hopefully you're disciplined enough to just get up and run no matter what kind of thing, which usually doesn't happen for most people. So I think it's kind of similar to that, like in life, where setting goals and having like a target or something you're shooting for or trying to attain at some point is super helpful. And it actually helps you make decisions and use it as a filter to like different ways that you might want to
Mhm.
go or different decisions you might make on how to get there. And so I think in particular in businesses, especially small business, especially kind of like those sub $20 million companies, even more obviously on top of that, they still make those financial goals, but it really does help you drive what you're trying to accomplish. Like if your
Mhm.
goal is really, I really want a huge margin every year. That's awesome. You probably won't necessarily spend the risky dollars in hiring people or like
Right.
larger investments like that, because that's going to eat into that margin if you're not a funded company type
Mhm.
of a thing. And so it's just helpful to have like some of those, I guess, almost like due north, if you will, or things that you're shooting for, or kind of targets that you're trying to approach or achieve. And I think starting with a revenue goal is super helpful. Oftentimes I
Mhm.
try to look at like 10 years out as that, hey, where do you want to be in 10 years?
Mhm.
And not having it be super defined, but just going, what's your revenue goal in 10 years? Like, what are you trying to build towards in 10 years? And then you can, reverse engineer that, if you will, to kind of come up with a plan to get there. But that's usually where I start.
I like that. So, speaking specifically on revenue goals, what
Yeah.
are some ways that a business can look at hitting them or achieving them?
Well, it depends on what the goal is. Some people have these, what you might call a BHAG or a big, hairy, audacious goal. And those are bigger goals. Those are going to be things that probably you don't know how to achieve, when you're setting it. You're like, this is
Mhm.
where I want to get to, but it's going to take me the amount of time to get there, before I can
Mhm.
really see or have an understanding of how to achieve that goal. And then there are some where you're like, it's very incremental. Maybe it's a
Mhm.
smaller one. Maybe it's less risky. Maybe it's not, you're not maybe as driven in that area. None of these are problems or challenge, they're all fine.
Mhm.
But it kind of depends on where you want to go. If you set a big, hairy, audacious goal and say, or say you're $1 million company today, but in 10 years, you want to be a $20 million company or a $30 million company, you're probably going to have to make some serious moves or maneuvers to be able to achieve those results, especially in the services industry where you're really selling people's time. I mean, that's
Right.
kind of what we're doing. However you
Mhm.
sell in the industry, if it's in points, if it's in value pricing, if it's in, whatever hours, material, time and materials, you're selling in some way, shape or form, you're selling people's time. And so
Mhm.
there's lots of different ways to do it. One is obviously you need to build a sales team. That's going to be, like kind of par for the course, if you will. Like you've got to have different people that are selling and you've got to have your products figured out and you're kind of working on some of that organic growth. Ideally, you've got some sort of marketing channels so that your people are coming to you and knocking on your storefront, if you will, to do business with you. But then you've also got some sort of outbound where you're going out and trying to get business. And
Mhm.
those are great. And you need those opportunities and you need those like deals walking in the door, if you will, like on a regular basis to kind of continue to move forward on things and kind of almost taking care of like almost short-term numbers and short-term goals.
Mhm.
But then also looking at like mergers or acquisitions or those types of things, because it does help you like jump forward really quickly. So for instance, we just did a merger with another agency that was about the same size as us. And so we doubled everything. So I kind of look at it as in we almost skipped like 3 to 5 years worth
Mhm.
of that like grind of growth, if you will, where it's like one deal at a time, and then okay, now everyone's maxed out, and okay, now we need to hire these people. And we broke this system, and we kind of like jumped over a lot of that because of the fact that we chose to add 15 people to the team at once, and high, like what, almost $1.5 million essentially in kind of recurring revenue to the, so we just jumped really quickly to get there. So that's an option of doing it. If it's none of these are for the I guess weak at heart or weak in spirit, if you will. You have to be pretty driven to do those because they're really hard work and there's lots of details to figure out, and it's hard to find the right person and all those types of things for a merger. Acquisitions are another way to do it. That happens all the time. You're looking really to acquire oftentimes a book of business or a talent or a skill set or a team of those that talent or skill set, or a market or industry that you're trying to get into. There's lots of ways to look at that too. But oftentimes what's helpful about it is if you're doing that like organic kind of slower grind growth, which we've done for 8 years, you are, I feel like I'm just rambling now, but hopefully it's helpful for some people. You're really like, selling as much as you can, building as much of a margin as you can, and then you go hire a couple people to be able to deliver some of that service or go out and get more business. And then you're kind of burning that margin until those people start performing, if you will. And you're repeating that process over and over and over again. So it's kind of risky. Whereas when you're going out and like acquiring a book of business or you're doing a merger or something, you're really like buying expenses, but you're also buying revenue that covers that, ideally covers those expenses, right? And so it's a little, I mean, it's kind of weird to me, but in my brain, I think of it, it's like, oh, this is less risky to be able to do this than it is to slowly organically grow. There's going to be people that have tons of different perspectives than that, and I welcome all of those. But for me, as I've looked at it, it's almost been a little bit less risky to kind of do that type of a thing. Obviously, it's got to be the right business, got to be the right fit, got to be the right partners or whatever it might be. But yeah, I don't know if that helps give a couple points to it. So organic growth, inbound, outbound sales, bringing on a sales team, really helping kind of scale that. You've got then mergers where you go out and find partners and you bring those in and you kind of divvy up part of the business and then you'd start charging together. Or you've got acquisitions, which oftentimes those acquisitions are kind of folding team, talent, book of business into your existing company and existing culture. So those are kind of like 3 different options at least.
Yeah. And one that I might add too is maybe even productizing services. So creating some additional revenue streams by really simplifying what you do and creating some kind of membership or real straightforward offering with a high profit margin that can just give you predictable revenue, predictable income. That could be even an additional way to help hit that goal. Obviously, mergers and acquisitions are going to help do that, escalate the speed of that quite a lot. But well, what would you say would be probably the best option, or what are things that people should take into consideration as they're deciding?
Yeah. All right. So everybody's different. Everybody's going to have different, and we're going to go back to goals again. Everybody has different goals, different things they want to build or do or achieve, or, lots of people are lifestyle business. Like, it pays me a great, living wage, and I'm engaged as much as I want to be. And I've got maybe a smaller team that helps execute some of it. So I can maybe be gone a little bit and you can share work and you're all wearing lots of different hats, and it's great. And that's awesome. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And having that kind of group of people that you're excited to be with, it's maybe more of a tighter knit family, and you've got like maybe some 5 to 20% growth goals over the course of each year or something like that. So there's nothing wrong with that. I would say though, if you are like pretty driven to kind of go, hey, how big can I grow this, or I want to make it a certain level. So my goal, and for most of my business career, has always been to try to figure out, how do I create a 10 and 2 business? So $10 million top line and $2 million bottom line. So how do you figure that out? Because generally that means that you're going to be able to weather most storms that come out, right? And there's always those storms and ups and downs and economies and businesses and business sectors. And so that's kind of been some of the things I've been driven on, is how do you figure that type of a thing out? My goal is bigger than that for this agency, but that's kind of just been stuck in my head for a long time. How do you figure out how to achieve that? And I'm kind of driven more on that side. So for me, I don't know if I really want to take, 10 years to get to that, whatever significant goal is that's out there. Slow grind, hiring one person at a time. We're going to still do that. But how do you like almost kind of pour more gas on the fuel? And so for us, with that larger goal, a merger made tons of sense. There'll be some acquisitions in the future, I'm sure. But that's kind of made a little bit more sense for us, because it's almost kind of bolting on. I also love people, love building culture, love building teams. And so for me, that's like, I like doing that. Other people are building agencies and they're more like, I like doing design or strategy. Awesome. Then this might not be a good idea for you, because you're going to increase your people and your team and your culture that you're building really fast. And it could be super overwhelming if that's not something that you're interested in or excited about or good at. And so you have to kind of play almost like a matrix, pros and cons and all those types of things of what you want to do and what you want to achieve. So I can't say, hey, this is the one thing you should do or the one thing you shouldn't do. It's up to everybody. We haven't necessarily been huge on the leverage side or the funding side, and we've kind of been more bootstrapped most of the time. And so that's been had its pros and cons as we've built a business. And so sometimes it requires funding to be able to do a merger or do an acquisition and those types of things, to buy into things, whatever. So you kind of have to, there's like, I don't know, a bunch of different data points that you have to evaluate when you're doing it. So I don't know if that makes sense. I didn't quite answer like which is the best, but I gave some ideas.
It does. And even just things to kind of think through as you're deciding what your goals should be and how you want to hit them.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, great to talk with you today.
Always. See ya.
All right. Bye.